All right, in this short video, we're going to bring in a TIFF, a GeoTIFF file, and look at ways of displaying and working with the near-infrared and red bands to calculate our NDVI. So a couple ways of bringing this data in. First, I can just go right out to my Add Data window and navigate to the folder where I've got my TIFF image, and you'll see here I've uncompressed that underneath my temp folder, and I have the raw TIFF image. And I can bring that in as a single image with all the bands associated with it. So if I just highlight TIFF and hit add, it brings that image in with the red, green, and blue bands already displayed as part of a single image. And I can right click on that and look at the properties, and I can switch between what bands represent what channels, and change my characteristics and further work in how I'm going to best display that information. In this case, I want to calculate my NDVI. So I want to work with the bands independently. And in this particular image, we know that the red channel has my near infrared and my green channel has my red band in it. So I'm going to bring them in independently. So I'm going to turn that off, go back into Add Data, and instead of clicking this as a whole, I'm going to double click on it. I'm going to bring in my near infrared band 1 and my red band 2 into the ArcMap session as independent bands or independent channels. And so at this point I can visually see the differences between the two. So band 1, my near infrared colors are depicted in this particular band versus my red colors are depicted here. And so I want to take these two and run my calculations off of that. Now, we know the calculation or the formula for NDVI is near infrared minus visible or red divided by near infrared plus red. And so in our case, we're using red and green bands. And so we'll run this kind of formula here to calculate our NDVI. So what I'm going to do is go to my custom window, make sure that under my extensions, my spatial analyst, the extension is turned on. I'm going to go over to my system toolboxes. So toolboxes, system toolbox, go down to spatial analysis tools, and we'll look under map algebra. Under map algebra, we can look at the raster calculator tool. Okay, so we'll bring this up, and this is going to allow me to execute that formula, that NDVI formula, against these two bands here. So again, band 1 is my near infrared and band 2 is my visible or red, and we're going to run our calculations. And basically we just build that calculation right here in this window. And what I want to make sure I do is ensure that my values maintain its format. So I want to use the float constraining tool here. So I'm going to use float to do my calculations in. So the first part of my calculation was to take my near infrared minus my red, right? So we'll go near infrared was band 1, so band 1 minus band 2. Okay, so and use the windows. Try not to type in the values. Just use the graphical windows, double click and click in here and do whatever you want to make sure this thing works right. Try typing in, you might get something wrong. Next, I'm going to make sure my mouse is outside of that close parenthesis, and I'm going to start my next calculation, which was to minus or divide my near infrared plus my visible. So now I'm going to use the divide and use my float again, and within my float I'm going to say near infrared plus my visible or red, band 2. So there's my formula down here. And my output raster is going to put it here. I'm going to go ahead and put it back into my temp folder. And I'm going to give this a new name. We'll call this NDVI for my 411 tile schema. And I'm going to go TIFF. Now, if I leave that blank, that extension blank, it's going to create a grid out of that, a grid format. I could use .jpg, jp2, img. I can put any extension at the end there that I want to, and it'll create that image, that raster for me. So NDVI, let's make sure I tap that right. NDVI, there we go. Underscore 411.tiff, hit save. So I got my map algebra in here, my new raster image, and we'll hit convert, and it's going to go through this process and build this image for me. All right, once it's done, you have a little pop-up window. It'll show me raster is completed. It'll load it here inside of my table of contents, and we know it's right because I have my low to high values all within -1 to 1, and so we know that did its math well. And at this point, I could simply just identify one of these pixels out here and get the image, get the value, and that's going to give me my NDVI for that pixel. Or I could classify this from a rendering standpoint. So go properties, and lots of ways that you can do this. I'm just going to pick something simple here. So we could do stretch value, so it gives us that sort of continuous display. And we'll come down here to, let's go blue to red. Where are we at here? Right here. I could invert that, so my red is high. Let's go and do an inversion on that. So red is going to show my high NDVI values, and blue my low. Hit apply, and we can see those come out of there. That's sort of using the stretch method. I could also right-click and do discrete or classified value. So let's do discrete. Classified, where it's going to build a histogram for me. Again, picked in the right color ramp shadow for me. Let's do the red to blue again. I hit apply, and you kind of see where this is starting to go here. And I can invert those colors and resort them out. But now I've got access to my rendering and identifying each cell with the actual NDVI in there, and I can render that basically how I want to at this point. And I could at this point create a point feature class or a polygon feature class with just the pivot area that will then kind of give me my yield numbers for the pivot area, and that'll be another presentation.